What's going on, Imperials? I'll be honest, I actually had a pretty tough time with this list since the Hoenn region, in my opinion, has some of the best overall Pokemon designs. It may even be the best out of all with its blend of originality with believability. It has a good balance of dynamic 3-stage lines and interesting one-offs. I almost put Masquerain on this list just because it's not a water type, and I really like Masquerain. It's one of my favorite bug types. That's just how difficult it was to find enough Pokemon for this list. So, here are my top Hoenn Pokemon I have a problem with. Hopefully. Number 6. Nosepass. Most rock types aren't the most diverse group out there. They mostly consist of what are essentially just big boulders. So how do you make it different? By making it an Easter Island statue. Well, not terrible. This may not have been the first thing that I jumped to from the ancient world. Maybe because Hoenn is a tropical island region too? Nosepass' design is not terrible, all things considered, but they took what could have been a fun travel buddy and gave him all the fun of, well, a pet rock. See, through various dex entries and other appearances, it's made clear that Nosepass doesn't move. He stands perfectly still at all times, only shown to move his limbs a tiny bit. If that wasn't bad enough, Nosepass, as one might expect from the name, has a compass for a nose. That means that he only faces north. All the time. While I'm not sure how stringent they are on that point, if it's true, then you better be requesting the south side of the battlefield every time. Otherwise, you'll have to forfeit. If you ask me, that's just a little too much maintenance for a Pokemon that's as interactive as my favorite hat rack. Number 5. Luvdisc. There have been a number of fish Pokemon over the years, some of them pretty standard and others are a bit more elaborate. With so many types of fish in the real world, it's not surprising that this would be reflected in Pokemon. And with the number of stupid-looking fish, I suppose that was bound to be reflected as well. Luvdisc sounds like a CD you burned for your girlfriend in high school, but it's actually this underwhelming Pokemon. Luvdisc has decent speed and little else. And with its placement in the Pokédex right before the pseudo-legendaries, it makes it even more disappointing. It's a fish that looks like a heart, but why? The fish it's based on aren't specifically heart-themed. Wouldn't a cutesy normal type have been better for a heart-themed Pokemon? Obviously Fairy would now, but that didn't exist back in the 3rd generation. Luvdisc is one of those Pokemon you encounter while surfing and go, oh yeah, that guy existed! At least they gave it an evolution in the 5th generation to help it... What's that? Are you serious? But how... I mean, just look at him! Okay. Well, never mind then. I guess Luvdisc is doomed to remain single forever. Ironic.
Number 4. Hariyama. I've mentioned before how I'm not a fan of human-like Pokemon, but it's worth mentioning again. These are animals. If any of them are going to be overly humanoid, I prefer they at least be legendary in some way. And Hariyama is in no way a legend. He's just another bland, pure fighting type. A concept we've seen before and since. It really doesn't help him stand out from the crowd. Medichamp's design is on a similar level, but he gets a pass since he's the first fighting psychic type, which adds more to his character. I don't even know what Makuhita is supposed to be, and their names are a pretty big mouthful. I know he's a sumo wrestler or something, but that alone was not enough to carry this Pokemon. Incineroar is a wrestler, but he's also a tiger. They didn't just make him a big dude, they added more to it. Just because he's a pure fighting type doesn't mean you're shackled into making him a vaguely human Muppet creature. Look at Primeape. He's a pure fighting type, but he's also an angry pig monkey thing that seems to just want more honeycomb. I think a big reason why I'm so hard on Hariyama is the fact that this generation also has Blaziken and Breloom, two awesome fighting types that have such great designs. And then there's this guy who I'm pretty sure was supposed to be a reject Hitmon. Number 3. Azumarill. Marill and Azumarill were pretty popular Pokemon in the 2nd generation. Many people drew comparisons between Marill and Pikachu, and whether they were intentional or not, the similarities are definitely noticeable. So what's the best way to keep these similarities going? Give them a pre-evolution in the generation following their introduction. Except I don't think they got it quite right. Pichu was a smaller, cuter Pikachu that was also an electric type. It goes without saying that Pokemon that evolve share the same types, but apparently someone needed to say it to these guys because Azumarill was a normal type. Just normal. and evolves into a water type. Not from a stone or by location, just because. This makes no sense. Is Azumarill genetic makeup as unstable as Eevee? If not, there's no reason that it should spontaneously morph into an aquatic being. He learns more water attacks than he does normal, for crying out loud. Sure, they're both fairy types now, but that's 3 generations too late. And they couldn't even give the poor thing arms? I imagine someone stumbling across this design and there not being a label for what type it should be, so they slapped some normal on it until they could figure it out. Come to think of it, there might not have been a label for the name either, because Azumarill is a pretty terrible one. I mean, you just take the name of a later evolution and cut out a chunk in the middle? Who would have thought that that was a good... Oh. Huh. Well, at least now we can look forward to a regional variant of Azumarill that's a psychic type. Number 2. Volbeat and Illumination. These two are completely disappointing and forgettable pair of bug types, with no discernible advantages or redeeming traits to raise them out of obscurity. I initially had them lower on the list, but after thinking about it more, they simply exemplified all the wasted potential a Pokemon can have. But it didn't have to be that way. There were already so many bug types by the 3rd generation, and even bug and flying types, but these two could have been extremely unique. It may not be obvious, but what are these two Pokemon based on? That's right, Fireflies! Fireflies! The stuff writes itself, people. Even if they weren't any good, Volbeat could have stood out as the very first bug and fire type Pokemon. But Illumination doesn't look like a fire type. You're right, but what's another name some people use for fireflies? Lightning bugs. Yep, Illumination could have been the first bug electric Pokemon if the creators had just spent a couple more minutes thinking about these two. They may have still been terrible to use, but at least they'd have something to set them apart. Then we could have had our first bug fire and bug electric Pokemon a full 2 generations before we actually got them. Just the sheer lack of concern or originality shown to these two makes it clear that they lack any defining features that tells me I should even bother to remember them. I don't know why I'm so surprised though. This is the generation that let the Dragonfly go by the wayside. Number 1. Castform. Man-made Pokemon have been pretty cool. There are some that seem to be a byproduct of us living our lives, and others we intentionally created to gain power or understanding. And then there's this place that decided the single greatest problem facing humanity is not knowing what the clouds will be doing tomorrow. So, the Hoenn Weather Institute decided to bring one of those clouds to life and make the Pokemon Castform. First of all, I feel like the weather equipment they already had on site would be just as, if not more effective at determining the weather than this thing. Secondly, your equipment doesn't require food or sleep, nor would it get in a mood and refuse to be cooperative. Animals are known to do that. Even people do that. So who thought this was a better use of research investment than Mew 3? I know you want to introduce a Pokemon to take advantage of your brand new feature in the games and have someone interact with the weather, but couldn't they at least make Castform a little good instead of making its stats a paltry 70 across the board? And furthermore, he fails at his one job. Sure, he's got a sun form, rain, and hail, but what about sand? You're telling me that they just forgot there could be sandstorms? When they can literally see the desert from the research facility? There's no reason Castform shouldn't have a sandstorm form that turns him into a ground type. Is there even any place in Hoenn that hail occurs naturally? They felt that was more important, even though there's a sandstorm constantly happening the next route over? That'd be like Saucebug having a form for winter, spring, summer, and that's it. Until somebody remembers to finish this Pokemon, I will always have a problem with him. But it's been 14 years at this point, so I wouldn't hold my breath. There are my top Hoenn Pokemon I have a problem with. Boy, that was hard. Let me know if you agree, or if you had a tough as time as I did down in the comments below. Also be sure to leave a like, share this video, and subscribe so that you too can become an Imperial today. And we'll see you around next time.